Hi, my dearest of family. Today we are going to be talking a little bit about finances. This was a request of my student to have a bit of a recap on how to look at certain type of remedies to your financial problems. So I decided to put a very short video together on this. Everyone talks about the second house for money and the eighth house for, well, darker things. But if you treat them as separate, you are missing the reality of magic in your natal chart. So today we are looking at the money axis. If you have money coming in, which is the second house, but it disappears into emergencies or debt, then this video is going to be for you. So, I have a client who actually earns six figures, but somehow she's always broke due to taxes or shared obligations because she actually has got an afflicted eighth house. So I wanted to kind of like show you some ways of working with your chart so that you can maybe find some type of remedy for that. But think of the second house cusp. Let's imagine that you have got Taurus on the cusp. It's very slow but steady accumulation. Or imagine that you have got Aries on the cusp. That's very impulsive spending or very impulsive earnings as well. So think of the second house as your wallet. If Jupiter is in your second house, the wallet is big. If Saturn is here, that wallet is a very tight, it has got a very tight zipper. So you need to know which one you are working with before you can try to manifest it. Now, the eighth house, imagine the eighth house is a leaky bucket. So the eighth house is not just about death. It's other people's money, it's taxes, inheritance, the partner's money, and so forth. So imagine that you have got a business partnership going on. You might have a great second house, but if your eighth house ruler is in the 12th house, for example, it might indicate that your partner somehow is leaking your shared resources without you knowing. So, by the way, if you would like to learn a little bit more about the second house and how it functions and looking at the all the signs and the ruler of your second house, I did write a book about it. I think it's a good 200 pages altogether. So this might be something super valuable for you. I would say that, if you look at your second house cusp and see Aries, Taurus, or Cancer, you aren't seeing the money flow. It's usually a dignity issue with the ruler. So, like I said, I wrote an entire guide on the second house, the second house, the house of values that break down every cusp and where your ruler is hiding your profit and so forth. So you might want to be actually thinking a little bit more, investing into that book. So, but going back to the original topic, never treat the second house and the eighth house separately. The eighth house is going to show you where that money is kind of leaking out of your pockets. So you're going to have to be able to balance them out. Therefore, one of the greatest signature of being able to have money is when the second and the eighth house ruler are pretty much in good dignity and they are in certain type of interactions with each other. So, for example, imagine that you have got the second house ruler is Mars, and then the eighth house ruler is Venus. And maybe they are forming a conjunction in the sign of Pisces, for example, where both planets feel relatively very healthy. Now, the other thing that I would mention is that, I made a video about how your financial situation is connected to your physical body. Kind of like how the bank account is matching up your fat stored within the body. Well, because it is all connected to your root chakra. And the root chakra is a very Saturnian part of your chart. So often to our financial problems, actually Saturn is something that might be able to provide you remedy. I would say that often people are so afraid of Saturn being in the second house, but actually it can really crystallize and materialize your your financial situation. Imagine, yes, of course, Saturn is a planet of worry as well. So when you are constantly worried about survival, or the eighth house is leaking and kind of draining you, it eventually can manifest physically as well. So this is where we see issues, for example, connected to the root chakra. So my friend wrote a book about the financial illnesses. This is available on my website, and I'm going to be link it into the description box as well. If you want to check it out, it's a good 120 pages, and it covers, I think, 21 or 23 illnesses that are connected to financial problems. And it does look at it from a psychological point of view, and potentially where there might be a bit of a leak, for example, in your upbringing. So that's another thing that I have wanted to mention. Now, I want to give you a couple of great alignments as well as some challenging alignments that might indicate that you're going to have to be able to kind of work through your own financial limitations. So one of the challenging position could be when the second house ruler and the eighth house ruler are in opposition, or when the ruler of the second house is in the eighth house, or the ruler of the eighth house is in the second house, because it kind of creates a direct opposition. This often represents kind of like a life on credit cycle in your life. So let's say you have got a high income, the second house ruler, but it is constantly being pulled across the axis to pay off something in your life, karmic debts, family obligations, alimony, and all those type of stuff. High interest loans, taxes, or the partner spending habits are somehow creating the friction here. Imagine that you earn, I don't know, $10,000 this month, but you have got an unexpected $9,000 tax bill or a medical emergency. So the sign is going to talk to you about what type of scenarios we've got. If it's a medical emergency, maybe it's going to be Virgo on the eighth house cusp. So that's one of them. Of course, the square could be another challenge here. So when the second house ruler and the eighth house ruler are in square aspect, especially when the eighth house ruler is the faster moving planet, then the income comes in slowlier, and but the bills are coming quite fast. So this is often with the squares, it's kind of like the fines and the penalties. So the money is lost through friction with systems like legal battles over inheritance, alimony, bad investments. We are going into these get rich quick schemes, for example, thinking that this is going to change our lives, and then it might not be able to. So, or imagine that every time you are trying to build your savings, the eighth house crisis forces you to liquidate your second house assets at a loss. So it feels like that you are walking up an escalator that actually goes down. That's the type of feeling with that. Now, if you've got the eighth house ruler in the second house, then this is, I think, one of the most challenging placements for self-esteem as well as financial independence, because the other people's money is coming into our pockets. So this could indicate, for example, that your financial account is tied to someone else's drama or dreams. And imagine that you might be supporting a family member who refuses to work, or your value is entirely dependent on what the partner thinks of you, or you have to be making sacrifices in your life because the partner is supporting you financially. So this is actually a major trigger for your root chakra illnesses we have discussed before, as well as in a previous video, because someone is kind of like constantly taking away your survival, and that can create a chronic physical tension within your body. Now, when the ruler of the eighth house sits in the second, I call the eighth house as a surgical theater. So it's the surgical theater of the soul is happening in your wallet. And therefore, these people are often in a constant survival mode. So I highly recommend checking that book out because I think it might be changing your life completely. Now, other little challenging type of scenarios. So when the second house ruler is well placed in your chart. So for example, Jupiter is there, but the eighth house ruler is debilitated or heavily afflicted. What it means is that the eighth house ruler is having a interaction with Saturn or Mars, or it is placed, for example, in a difficult house, 6, 8, or 12. So it means that you are actually a money magnet, but maybe your management is a bit of a disaster. So you can have a high salary, you can have a successful business, but you lose it all to bad partnerships or lawsuits. Then the next one is when the eighth house ruler is strong. Let's say it's in rulership, for example, but the second house ruler is weak, or again, it's in a dark house, 6, 8, or 12. Then it is showing you that you have got the access to other people's money, but you have no personal earning power or you have no self-worth at all. So imagine this person living off an inheritance or alimony or a wealthy spouse, and maybe we live in a mansion, but they don't have that. You don't have your own money, so you cannot spend money without asking for permission. So that could be, and the root chakra would be there, something to do with the physical dependency. And for example, this can create certain type of leg or feet issues because you don't have literally not having a leg to stand on. So that's a certain type of an independence, or sorry, codependence meta. Then imagine a situation where both rulers are in good dignity and maybe aspecting each other favorably, such as trine or sextile. Well, that's a total financial flow. So you earn well, you know how to multiply it through others. Maybe you start a business with your own capitals, and then investors flock to you because they trust your value. So that's a good one to see. And then imagine that the both rulers are afflicted. Maybe they are even squaring each other, maybe in a blind spot as well. So sixth house, 12th house. Then it's kind of like a payday loan cycle. So you struggle to earn, you struggle to make ends meet. But what you do have is immediately seized by debt or crisis or family and so forth. So often this is a financial trauma. You are afraid to look at your bank account and you are terrified of the mail because maybe it's going to be another bill, for example, that I have to pay and so forth. So this is where, the most significant illnesses could manifest, like lower back pain, structural issues within the body, deep-seated paranoia about the financial future, and so on. So very brief video about your own financial situations. I mean, do let me know how the second house ruler and the eighth house ruler are connected. It's also possible that the second house ruler and the eighth house ruler are in aversion, meaning that they have no aspect between each other. There could be some scenarios there too, such as they have good dignity, but they are in aversion, meaning that it might indicate that you have got the ability to attract other people's money. You have got great talents as well, but maybe you don't know how to monetize them. So, of course, focusing on the time limits a little bit, there could be a lot of scenarios. But if this is an interest of yours, do let me know in the chat box below because I can make these short videos to kind of like educate you on your own finances. So, by the way, don't forget to like and subscribe and potentially actually share the video with others. Do you have a friend who has got the second house ruler and the eighth house ruler are in good dignity, but maybe with with a bit of a challenging aspect and so forth? Because they might be able to take something away from this video. So good luck, everyone, and I will see you in my next video. Take care. Bye bye.